Mhm. Hello everybody and welcome to another theory video on my custom chess position What's Your Decision? In this video I'm going to be going over the move 1e4, and it could also be reached via f4 and then e4. One of the first videos I made a couple years ago was going over this opening, so I'm not going to rehash the same lines that I did in that video. However, there's just been some more advancements to the theory in this line, so similar to other lines that I've recorded on recently, I'm just gonna show the updated theory, some new plans, and a greater understanding of this opening. So this is the most common sort of setup. Uh, it's not any sort of fancy setup, so most people, especially who are new to the position and who don't want to go into the theory, just play a setup like this. So probably knowing theory in this position will be most useful, um, but in this position, there's a bit less theory or there's a lot less theory than some of the other lines. So, so e4, we're going to go over a couple of lines, but c5, f4. Um, and the main move has now switched, so it used to be, well, actually I'm going to go over why c4 doesn't work. So c4, it might remind you of playing f4, f5, like I have shown in previous videos. However, when black does it, they're down a tempo, and this one tempo makes the move losing. So after c4, um, bishop g4 is played. After c5, f3, knight e6, knight f2, b5, knight d1, knight d6, and knight takes c3, b takes c3, queen takes, sorry, then there's bishop takes e6, f takes e6, bishop takes c5, rook takes c5, and queen takes c3. And the idea is that after b4, normally in these lines the queen would have to move back and then black would get c3. So for example, if black didn't take e6, and they took queen to c3 after b4, queen e3, black gets the pawn to c3, and this should be fine here because the bishop is sort of is still trapped in, and black has a fairly strong structure on the king, though this is still playable for white. But so that's why white takes on e6. Sorry, they take on c3, then they take on e6. And now they're freeing, white is freeing black's queen and bishop, but after bishop takes c5, rook takes c5, queen takes c3, and b4, there's queen e3, so now we can't play c3 because the rook will be hanging. So black defends the rook, but then white's able to get c3, and yeah, it sometimes takes the engine a little bit to see, but white is plus 1 point something in this position. I was going over it. It is a pretty good. Let's see, a5 is here. Let's just quickly go into this. Um, yeah, I mean a5 over here uh, could be could be a move actually, but yeah, I think once you give the engine some time to think, it realizes why it's better here. So we don't want to play that. And yeah, I mean, there's other moves that white could play, but that move f3 is winning. So, um, anyways, back to the main lines. So knight e6 is the move here. Knight d3. Um, And in the previous video, which was a couple years ago, I had the move d5 over here, and I also had the move rook d8. But after d5, white can take on d5. Knight d4, bishop g4, bishop b5. So black is sacrificing the exchange, but they're going to try to get the knight into f5. similar to lines I've showed before. But the problem is that after f3, rook c d8, white has this move, knight takes b4. And if black were to take back, then the bishop takes on d4. And after king takes b4, there's rook e1 over here, and the rook's going to go to e3, and white is just winning. And so the other move I had shown in the other video was rook d8, which is preparing to play d5 next. But after bishop g5, bishop g4, and d5, e takes d5, rook takes d5, f3, bishop b5, knight hf2, knight d4, knight e4, and white is quicker to get in sacrifice, and white is just winning over here. And I think I might have also had c6 in the previous video, and c6 is a move, so if I just show a few more moves in this line, it's a fairly standard position, but the idea here is that, and I'm learning even more by just learning more about the position, but the preferred squares for the light squared bishop, well, the one that's not trapped at least, the preferred squares are g4 for the white bishop and b5 for the black bishop. So if black plays c6 and then knight ac7, this bishop here is not going to be on the ideal square. And the reason why this g4 square is the ideal square for the bishop is because a lot of times I'm realizing the bishop's actually going to be taking on this square, and there's a lot of lines where that's going to happen, as well as this bishop helps to protect the f5 square or the c4 square, and also the bishop is just better developed here, whereas the bishop on d7, for example, might just be getting in the way of black's pieces. Is in the opening, one of the main ideas is for both sides to try and free the pawn on f6 or c3, and this is the wrong color bishop. So just something to keep in mind. And so I have in my note here, engine gives white a comfortable advantage as black's bishop is not permitted to go to b5, so it's plus 0.9. So this is perfectly playable for black. It just white is a little bit better in a line like this. And so the new line that I've actually found over here is to go play d6 over here, which might seem a little bit counterintuitive just because black is not well, just because black is not defending this c3 pawn. But after d6 we see the very interesting idea. So bishop g4, bishop b5 is played, f3, c6, knight hf2, and d5. And see, the engine evaluates this a bit more favorably than the other line, which was plus 0.9. And this is because black has got the bishop to b5. So if we see a few moves, the way black did it was they first played d6 and they allowed the bishop to go to b5. Then they played c6 and d5, playing into the center, but only after they put the bishop on b5. So after d5, and over here, like, the theory kind of runs out. However, there are different common ideas that I've actually discovered in this opening. So a couple years ago, where I would have ended off theory in a position like this, I can show examples of some of the key plans. And see, the thing is that bishop takes d3, I have a move over here, which is decent for black. And my comment here is to see further lines for why black might want to play this. If white wants to play for a win, they must also free black's pieces. So if I go back, for example, and let's say that black plays a more logical move, knight d5. See, already over here, this move is in inaccuracy. And the idea is that in a position like this, so white is up a tempo, and there's always these little sacrifices that can be made to change the position. And so black has to be very careful being behind, and even white in some cases has to be very careful, which is why a lot of times taking the knight on e6 can be very good. For example, over here, knight takes b4 is played for white. And after c takes b4, bishop takes e6 is played. F takes e6. Now black's queen and bishop are out. They're free at least. But white is kind of crashing through. Bishop takes d4, c5, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight takes c3, and bishop d7. And you can see over here, okay, black is up a piece because white sacrificed the dark squared bishop. However, white's king is very safe, and these pawns over here are quite strong, whereas black's king is weak and they don't have a pawn cover in front of them. So like you can see based on the evaluation, this position is probably playable for black, but white is a bit better over here. So I guess knight e4 gets played, and so on. White will maybe try to get an attack against black's king, and it's probably also more difficult for black to play this position than white. So if I were to go back to this position, rook cd8 can be played. You'll notice, okay, both sides are kind of just getting their rooks to the center. Rook fe8. See, and now already the evaluation jumps up a little bit. So, and now knight d5 in this position. So we basically just brought the rooks out one square, and now knight d5 is a mistake in losing. Again, knight takes b4, c takes b4, bishop takes e6, f takes e6, bishop takes d4, c5 takes... I guess the difference is now if the b pawn were to take, then yeah, rook takes d5 wins, because now the queen will be taking on c3. So the reason why this is just losing is because now black has to take with the knight, and once that happens, white isn't actually down any material. White isn't down any material, and white's pawns in front of the king. These are stronger than black, so white should just be winning in this position. So you can see it can get very challenging for both sides to play. But that's fine. Rook fe8, so black can not put a knight on d5, just so that they maintain protection over d4. And now comes a couple of moves. So one is knight d6, and this is threatening to checkmate on b7. So black takes and goes knight d5. So it looks like black is getting in, but then bishop takes d4, and this is making use of the fact that this rook is no longer protected. And so this knight is kind of strained as well. Bishop takes d4, c takes d4, knight takes b4, king takes b4, bishop takes e6, f takes e6, rook check, king c5, d7, rook d8, b4 check, king d6, queen takes c3, king takes d7, queen takes a3, and rook f8 maybe trying to sacrifice on this f6. But you can see over here that after this line that's played, white is better. Again, for the same reason that these pawns are better than black's. Though black's kind of out in the open, there's also c4 coming in for white. So but even in this position, it's saying queen b2, which I guess indirectly defends f6, is the only move for white to maintain the advantage. So very complicated positions. If we go back over here, so the purpose of showing these moves is like show some of the main ideas. Show some of the main ideas in this position, but also to see the tactical complexities. So instead, white can also go for bishop e6. And after f takes e6, you can already see, okay, now white is winning, and because knight takes b4, so you have to really be wary of these sacrifices. Bishop takes d4, and I believe over here white's just gonna have a big attack against the king, so maybe rook takes d4, but then the rook is gonna after c5, let's see. takes b4. Okay, knight d6 is played over here. Um, and yeah, you have to play bishop c6. Now knight c4, king b5. And I'm assuming the knight is going to take on a3. Or no, king b5. Oh, this is the move. King b5. Knight takes a3 check. Queen takes c3. So you can see it's very complicated. You have to have very good calculation. And I guess both sides could go wrong in a position like this. But you can, in this particular position, f takes e6 was not correct. So knight takes, so bishop takes d3. Black plays bishop takes d3, which prevents against white sacrifice. But then white takes with the rook. Rook takes d3. Now the f pawn can take. And white sacrifices to get the queen free. Bishop f7, rook c4, rook d2, c3, and white should be a bit better here in a position like this. And actually, as the engine runs, I think it's saying queen f8. But again, these are like only moves, so it gets very difficult for black to play with all these different sacrifices that white has. And if black were to take with the knight instead, not electing not to free the queen and bishop, yeah, I guess black shouldn't do that. And this is all to say, if we go, it's just so complex, and just because black is behind white slightly in terms of the development, black just has to be so careful, and there's so many ways for white to win if black just makes one small error, which is why going all the way back over here, black can just play bishop takes d3, c takes d3, knight d5, bishop, in a good video to watch actually, which explains more of the dynamics of this type of position, is I have a playlist of this. If you go to my channel and click on playlists, you'll see the latest video before this one on the theory move 1 e3. So not 1 e4, this one's e4. The theory move on 1 e3. A new opening variation that actually has bishop takes e6 ideas for white, and then bishop takes d3 for black, and I explain it more in depth about why this move is played. I'll only explain it more simply right now, but you can see that if you want to learn more. But basically, the gist of that idea is, now that black has taken and freed white's pieces, and this pawn on c2 has moved to d3, which makes these pawns weaker. Black will play king b5, a6. Eventually they'll just try to push their pawns through. It'll take a lot of moves. But it's fine that it's going to take a lot of moves through, because white has no plan in this position. Sure, white's pieces are free, but white can't really make a sacrifice, and the center is completely clogged. The whole board is completely closed, so white really has no plan. And if white doesn't take on e6, because that would allow white to also push their pawns forward, you can see by the engine, white is actually fine and not losing. Or maybe they are, because eventually black will slowly start pushing through. But if black is pushing too fast, then, like, for example, knight takes c5, different ideas white could play. So definitely it's not like a done deal, but white will have no sort of plan. So my recommendation is white to take on e6 as well. After f takes e6, king g4 is played, king b5, h4, a5, and now this is going to turn into a pawn promotion race, and I guess white is a tempo ahead of black, and that's the reason why they have just a very slight advantage here. But going through all these lines shows you all the little tactical ideas, or even the big tactical ideas that both sides have, especially white in a position like this, which is why for black, if they were to just free white's queen and bishop, I think that they could save a lot of trouble. But black could also pull off the exact same sacrifices as white if white isn't like quick with their moves, isn't careful, because again white, this setup is almost symmetrical in this variation. But yeah, even in this e4, which is like more like a quiet sort of opening, you can see all the tactical sacrifices that they are for both sides can just break through at any moment. And so that's the move with d6. But I want to show something else, which is, okay, after e4, c5 is not the only move. d5 is also there. f4, and I had in the previous video, a couple years ago, I had said d4 is the move for black over here. However, this move is still alright, but you can see even by the engine evaluation, this f5 move can be a bit annoying. And I've just put a few moves, I haven't gone too much in depth, but it does look like the f4, f5 openings, the f4, f5 openings, except this pawn on f5 is permanently going to be there, as well as this a knight could make its way to h5 and protect f6, so it's maybe a slightly better version of this opening for white. But that's no big deal really, because black doesn't have to play d4 right now. I just put knight e6 and said this is preferred over d4, as there would be f5 afterwards. So now after knight d3, and I've already shown d takes c4, but there's knight takes b4, f3, and white is just breaking through. So now black can play d4, and essentially it's the same position, but there's no f5 idea anymore. Probably the knight is just going to take on g5, yeah. Though I guess that could still be playable, perhaps, because f4, f5, like f4, knight e6, f5, knight takes g5 is playable. So yeah, could be something. But the really interesting idea is in this position. So first of all, bishop g4. Again, engine prefers the bishops to be on g4 and b5 if possible. So c5, f3, bishop b5, knight h f2, c6, e5, knight a c7, knight e4, knight d5, and I've said this position is completely equal. And if we were to show a few more moves, it gets into a very similar position, almost basically the same position as the d6, if you remember the d6, c6, and d5. That was where black played c5 in response to e4, but here black played d5, so now they have a more simple setup and they can get a symmetrical even setup. And over here, the lines and ideas and stuff are exactly the same that I just showed, but here I'm just showing one example where black goes for the sacrifice first, or like they go for the taking on d3 first and freeing the queen and bishop. Knight takes g5, f takes, you can see this exact same sacrifice. Bishop takes e5, f4, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes f6, bishop f3, for example. And this is another, basically the exact same sacrifice and the exact same line, but for the other side. So both sides can play this sort of line. You can like f3 in this position. The engine prefers black. The engine wants the bishop on g4, and because lots of these lines have the bishop taking on e6, that makes a lot of sense, especially because the bishop won't be as useful over here as well. Okay, while that line is even and it's played just like the e4 and c5 variation first, there's a very interesting move over here, which is this move bishop f3. And this is a new move I recently discovered, so it's not in my previous video. But after bishop f3, the idea behind this move is that it looks like, first of all, it's blocking the development of these two pieces. But okay, black's going to be playing c5 next anyway, so c5 gets played, e5. So now white is attacking this b7 square. And if black were to play c6, then white is going to play bishop g4. So they spent two moves, first going to f3 and g4, but now black's bishop is not able to go to b5. And after a few more moves, you can see it's a regular opening position. Engine prefers white a little bit more just because of where the bishop is placed. And so you can see, even though it spends a move, that's the idea for white, is to basically get the advantage of having the bishop on g4. Which is why over here, another move that black can play is they can play bishop b5 anyways, and that means they're making a sacrifice. So bishop takes b7, c6 is played, bishop takes a8, bishop c7, bishop b7, rook b8. So white is not winning a piece because now the bishop is trapped. But white wins two pawns because they won the b7 pawn and now the c6 pawn. And you can see over here, white still kind of has the advantage in this position. They're up a couple of pawns, though it's not really clear, like it's not like they're winning or anything, but another move. So bishop f3 definitely is a very good move, and actually is the best move in this position, which is just a very interesting idea, and with this opening over here. See, I showed that. Right, so I think to bishop f3 is anything else, c5, yeah. Which again just goes to show the intricacies of these of this opening. Yeah, this line remained the same. After e4, c5, any 96, 93, and d6 is now the main move over here, and that will get a similar position. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the lines that I wanted to show. I'm just wondering if there's anything that I missed. Let me check. Because there were some moves like early in the... Oh yeah, there's some other opening. So I said this is the open gambit, and I think in my previous video a couple years ago I said that this move is fine. D takes e4 because I had the line f3 coming after it, and then after e3 just taking on, and I said that this is probably fine for black. However, I discovered that this move bishop g4 wins. So again, bishop g4. After knight e6, f3, so the same idea is played, but the key difference is that after e3, and again, we don't want to allow white to take, because then they'll just have a good hold over f6, and if we take, then the rook is going to take on f3 and then take on c3. So e3, bishop takes e3, c5, knight f2. And we see the reason why this is winning is just because I guess the knight can go to d1 or e4 and just take on c3. And I guess there's also lines where the knight the bishop can maybe take on e6, but again, this bishop being on g4 is just better than it not here. Or to do the same line over here. Well, now there's bishop as well. Knight e4, rook f, e8. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to see. Bishop takes d3, knight d4, bishop takes d4, c takes d4. And actually, as we put in some more moves, see if white is like, it's starting to say white is even better here as well. So yeah. So yeah, we don't want to be taking over here. Let's see if there's anything else to show. But I think that's all. Yeah, this I've showed in the past. Oh, I think I didn't show this. Let me see what this is from. Oh no, this is from my previous analysis. Okay, I think I've showed everything, but just gonna quickly summarize with the new theory that was found is essentially what we're realizing is a couple of takeaways is that the bishops are best on g4 and b5 in almost all lines. And so that's why that bishop f3 to either force c6 or to win 2 pawns is so strong. But the other key thing is that, well, is a new sacrifice of, well, taking on b4 when there's still a knight on e6, and then taking the knight with the bishop, and then playing like bishop d4 and taking on c3 while both sides, queen and bishop, are free, but one side has a stronger pawn structure around the king, and the other side is under attack. But the side that is attacking is down a piece, so that was an interesting sacrifice we saw. And we also saw the reoccurring theme that's appearing more and more of the fact that both sides can just take and free the opponent's queen and bishop because the position in many lines is very too close for the other side to do anything. And then both sides can do that so that they have the idea of pawn promotion. Or one side could not do that and free the other side's pieces, but then they kind of are not able to do much, and then they just have to kind of counter white's pawn push or accepted draw if white doesn't want to do that. And I guess the other thing is, after this line, which I'll just reiterate over here, is that yes, this bishop f3. So because bishop f3 can give a little bit of an advantage, slight advantage to white, in my opinion, that makes me slightly prefer e4 c5, f4. I think this is probably black's best chance, and then they play d6 over here. Though I think the most common move will probably in this position be c6, just because it's the most natural move, trying to play d5 or rook d8, which white can get a little bit of an advantage after that. But d6 is the best move, allowing the bishop to go to b5. Yep. Okay, that should be it for another theory video of this position. Hope you enjoyed.